Vermont Ben. I'm a Ukrainian American. My grandfather was born in modern-day Ukraine, and I have distant relatives in Lviv Oblast, of whom some are males of military draft age. I've been following the war for over 10 years, since Euromaidan in 2013. When I was in college, I'm having a very hard time with the urge to dehumanize Russia. Russian soldiers, who are probably ordinary working-class people in Russian civil society, even who I know, not all support the war. The longer this goes on, and Ukraine, its history, its civilians, and its infrastructure continues to be destroyed by Russian bombs and drones, the more I feel myself losing part of the empathy that is fundamental to my view of society and politics. Do you have any suggestion for how I can better compartmentalize my thoughts and my emotions? If I understand your dilemma, on one hand, you're dealing with the attack on Ukraine, and the other hand, you're dealing with you're wanting to have empathy for average Russian people who don't necessarily have the ability to change what Putin's, essentially government wants to do. I don't know. I wish I could tell you. I wish I could tell you. I don't know. I'm not in that situation. I don't feel like it's interesting. I think, there may have been a time when I was younger, much younger, very much younger, where I would have had a more of an attachment in that way to Israel. I mean, the strange dynamic is, and I've seen, I think it was somebody on Twitter was like, we read off a poll that is cited by a lot of I've seen students, Zionist students, come on television and say 95% of Jews are Zionists. And it's based upon a poll that was taken, I don't know, about 5 or 6 years ago, I think it was, where, I don't know, 50% of the people, I'm just making up the numbers, I can't remember the specific of it, maybe it was 45% said that Israel is very important to them and or essential to them, and 35% said it, and Israel's very important to them. And somehow that gets translated into they're Zionists. I mean, Bobby Kennedy is very important to his sister and to his cousins, but they don't support him. The having grown up in an era where I was fully indoctrinated, and much of my Jewish identity was melded with a sense of Israel is a big part of that. It's obviously a relatively new phenomenon. Jews have been around for 5,000 plus years, and Israel's only been around for, 50 or 75, I guess, in terms of Israel's only been around for 75 years. I mean, there were obviously Hebrews and Jews in Jerusalem 2,000, 3,000 years ago. But that's not, it was Israel. It wasn't just the idea of Jerusalem I don't have that level of attachment to Israel. But that developed over the course of 40 years, 45, 46 years, that sort of divestiture. I've told the story multiple times on the program. I'm not going to go through it again, but when I was in Israel, saw the attack helicopters going to bomb Beirut, was, I think, the first time where I was like, wait a second, this isn't the narrative that we were taught. I thought we were the underdogs.
Shows a little bit of weakness, too, that you'd rather rely on polling maybe in 5 years out of date than maybe Eli Lake.
Well, I mean, there's also like, I mean, there's more recent polling and breakdowns of those polls that show like 25% of Jews think that Israel's an apartheid state. It's hard to imagine that those Jews are also Zionists. That, 4/5 of that 25% are Zionists. That's what would have to be necessary if there were 90% of Jews were Zionists. And that was also 2 or 3 years ago. Incidentally, this idea of apartheid this is not of Israel being an apartheid state. It's not a new development. Jimmy Carter's grandson announced, I guess yesterday, that his grandfather, Jimmy Carter, who's been in hospice for almost over a year, I think.
Over a year.
Since February 2023, yeah.
Is in the final stages of hospice. I mean, who knows? But look at this clip. This is Jimmy Carter on Democracy Now! In 2007, I believe. And this is the guy who forged the peace deal between Israel and Egypt. And this is in 2007, where the numbers were, and the intensity, I mean, of the violence was not, it's off the charts. What's happening, even in the West Bank as well.
Yeah, I mean, and when you hear people say the word apartheid is used by over-eager activists, know that the book that he's talking about here, published in 2006, was Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid, by Jimmy Carter, our former president.
And, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw that video of Israeli settlers beat a truck driver, a Palestinian truck driver, leaving the West Bank or in the West Bank, and their excuse, and this is what their excuse was. They thought he was bringing aid to Gaza.
It's unreal.
Not weapons, aid. I mean, that's their excuse. That's what justifies why they did it. Here is Jimmy Carter, and the dynamic has not changed since this date, except for it becoming more repressive, more violent, more asymmetric.
Is exactly accurate. This is an area that's occupied by two powers. They're now completely separated. The Palestinians can't even ride on the same roads that the Israelis have created or built in Palestinian territory. The Israelis never see a Palestinian except the Israeli soldiers. The Palestinians never see an Israeli except at a distance, except the Israeli soldiers. So within Palestinian territory, they're absolutely and totally separated, much worse than they were in South Africa, by the way. And the other thing is, the other definition of apartheid is one side dominates the other, and the Israelis completely dominate the life of the Palestinian people.
Why don't Americans know what you have seen?
Americans don't want to know, and many Israelis don't want to know what is going on inside Palestine. It's a terrible human rights persecution that is far transcends what any outsider would imagine. And there are powerful political forces in America that prevents any objective analysis of the problem in the Holy Land. I think it's accurate to say that not a single member of Congress with whom I'm familiar would possibly speak out and call for Israel to withdraw to their legal boundaries or to publicize the plight of the Palestinians, or even to call publicly and repeatedly for good faith peace talks. There hadn't been a day of peace talks now in more than 7 years. So this is a taboo subject, and I would say that if any member of Congress did speak out, as I've just described, they would probably not be back into Congress the next term.
All right. You know, what's fascinating about that is that, you know, I think at that time that was the case. And now, you know, we have a handful. We have a handful. Some in the Senate even. Some in the House, not that many. And the amount of dollars that are being deployed now to forward that mission that he was talking about 15 years ago has, you know, increased exponentially. But Jimmy Carter has no constituency he's responding to there. Let's be clear. I mean, this is a guy, you're just looking at a guy who basically works for your Habitat for Humanity, just builds houses for homeless people, homeless families, and no agenda. No agenda. Giving an honest assessment. And now, again, was at a time where it's much worse now. That was the baseline. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.